Alright, this is Miss Richard and I am back with another video. So today, this video has 4 parts. This is the function study guide. This is the solutions to the study guide. So you should be doing this as you're doing your study guide, or you could try to do your study guide first and then go back and check your answers. Alright, so I'm going in order from the top to the bottom, going from left to right. So the first one I'm going to look at says graph y equals 2x. So I'm going to show you 2 different ways that you can do this, and depending on which way works best for you, that's the way that you can do. Okay, so the first way that I'm going to do is I'm going to make a table of values. So in order for me to do that, if I look at y equals 2x, right? What is the rule that's happening here? Well, we're multiplying x times 2, all right? That's what y equals. So our rule is we're multiplying the x times 2. So if I make up a chart and I have my x and my y, well, in order for me to get to the x, to get from the x to the y, I have to multiply whatever x is, I have to multiply that times 2. Alright, so I'm multiplying x times 2. So if my x is 0, in order for me to get to the y, I have to multiply 0 times 2. Well, 0 times 2 is 0, right? Next, in order for me to get from the x to the y, I have to multiply any number that I pick. So in this case, I'm going to pick 1. If I multiply 1 times 2, that's going to give me 2. All right. And then what if I pick 2? All right. If I multiply 2 times 2, that's going to give me 4. So I'm doing the numbers in order 0, 1, 2. You don't have to do them in order. What if you picked 5? Well, if I multiply 5 times 2, that's going to give me 10. So you're looking at the relationship of how we're getting from the x to the y. Every time we're multiplying by 2 because that's the rule. All right. So now one of the ways I can do this is if I plot the points on the number line, okay? So if I plot 0, 0, that's going to be at my origin. Oops, that's going to be at my origin. If I put a point at 1, 2, that means that I'm going to go, if this is my x-axis, and this is my y-axis, I'm going to go 1 for x and up 2 for y, all right? If I'm going to do 2, 4, that means I'm going to go 2 for x and 4 for y. All right. And 5 and 10 is not on the graph, so I'm not really going to worry about that. Then it's hard for me to use a ruler with this pen that I'm using, so I want you to make sure that you do this with a ruler so that your work is neat. But you're just basically going to connect the points there. All right, and that's how you would do it if you're using a table of values. That's the first way that you can do it. The second way, let me see if I can change my pen to an eraser because I want to erase. Wow, that's super fast. All right. The second way that I'm going to show you is, I want to change it back to, guys, thank you for your patience. Okay, so the second way that I'm going to show you is by using this equation, y equals mx plus b. So some of you are familiar with this equation because we've talked about this a lot in class. The m tells us what the slope is, right? The slope is the rise, which tells us how much we go up or down, or the change in the y, over the run. which tells us how much we go from left to right. Okay? The B tells us what the y-intercept is. Y dash int. I'm going to abbreviate for that one. The y-intercept tells us where our graph crosses over the y-axis. Remember in class I was talking about a football player has an interception. He steals the ball from the other player. So the intercept is where the graph crosses over the y-axis. So in order to do this, you need to know the difference between the slope and the y-intercept, because we're going to be using these vocabulary words. The slope tells us how much we rise over how much we run. That tells us, how we get from one point to another when we were making the slope triangles. The y-intercept tells us where that point is going to be on the y-axis. All right. So now that we went over that, the foundation, let's look at our equation, which was y equals 2x. All right, based off of this equation, our slope is, and I'm going to represent that with an m, 2 over 1. All right, if there's nothing there underneath the 2, you have to put a 1 because you have to have a rise over run. All right, our y-intercept, I'm going to represent with the letter B because that's what we use in our equation. If there's nothing there, it's going to be 0. All right. When you're graphing a line by using this formula, you need to make sure that you start with the y-intercept always, because I can't go up 2 over 1. I have to have a starting point. So the starting point is the y-intercept, which is 0. All right, so I'm going to put a point right there. And then I'm going to go from that point, I'm going to go up 2 and over 1 because that's what my slope is. So if you think about this on a, let me see, up 2 over 1. So no matter where I go, I'm still going to go up 2 over 1. And I can make my line that way. It has the same, it's the same line that I graphed before. So what I'm doing with this is I have a point. From that point, if I know the slope, I can go, let me just kind of draw this, up 2 and over 1, right? So remember when we were learning about the slope triangles? That's when this comes in handy because we're doing it this way. We're looking at the slope triangles to make a line. All right, that's a long explanation, but hopefully one of these methods will help you do the first problem. Let's look at number 2. All right, now if I use this, if we're going to graph this line, let's look at what the rule says. Well, I'm basically subtracting 4 every time. I'm taking whatever x is and I'm subtracting it by 4. So if I have a table of values, right, and I come up with some numbers, right, I'm always using 0 because it's easy. But you're basically picking these numbers out that you want to use. But I want to make sure that they're not larger than any of the numbers on the table, because then I won't be able to plot those points. So just keep them small, keep them close to 0. All right, so my rule is I'm taking x and I'm subtracting it by 4. All right, so if I have 0 and I'm doing 0 minus 4, I'm going to get a negative 4. All right, if I'm doing 1 and I subtract 1 minus 4, well, 1 minus 4 is negative 3. If I take a number like 4, right, that one's easy. 4 minus 4 is 0. All right, so it doesn't matter which numbers you use. You just have to make sure that you're doing the rule every time. You're subtracting by 4. So now we're going to plot these points. All right, so I'm going to go 0 for if this is my y-axis, and this is my x-axis. It helps me to label the axis as I'm doing them. I'm going to go 0, -4. All right, so it's on the y-axis. That's my first order pair. Then I'm going to go 1, -3. That's my second order pair. I like to do 3 points because then I can see if they're going to connect and make a line. Then I'm going to do 4 for x and 0 for y. All right. Sorry, it's messy, but it is hard for me to use this pen, but you get the idea. Then I can connect my points. All right, and there's my line. Another way that you could have did this is by using the equation y equals mx plus b. All right, and if you have y equals x minus 4, all right, if there's nothing in front of the x, all right, the coefficient is 1. So that means that my slope is 1 over 1 because I have to have two numbers. I have to have a rise, which tells me how much I'm going to go up, and I have to have a run, which tells me how much I'm going to go left or right. The y-intercept, which is the b, is -4. So the b tells me where I'm going to cross over the y-axis. That's where I'm going to start. I'm going to go where y equals -4. So that's where my point would be for that. And I'm going to go up 1 over 1. So I'm going up 1. Whoops, sorry guys, it's really messy. Up 1. All right, up 1. That's a +1. And I'm going over +1. Okay, so when I do that, I get my next point on the graph. I can still keep going up 1 over 1, and it's going to hit the same point every time. All right, there's the second one. All right, number 3, to me, this one seems a lot easier. They don't give us it in the form as y equals mx plus b. They don't give it to us the way that it's presented in the first two problems. This time they use vocabulary, all right? So you have to make sure you understand what the y-intercept means, all right? They're not talking about the rise over the run. The y-intercept is where the graph crosses over the y-axis, where y is 3. So that's our starting point. I'm going to put a dot there. Then the graph, we're graphing a line that goes through -4, -1. So I'm going to plot this point on the number line. I'm going to go -4 for x and -1 for y. And I have my 2 points that I'm going to use. So now you're going to use your ruler. Again, I can't use a ruler because it's hard for me to use one. But you're going to draw your line, put arrows at the end, and we're done. Good job, you guys. So go ahead and pause the video if you need to draw the line, and make sure you're doing this on your paper. All right, here's example number 4. All right, this is the last question that we're going to do in this part 1. All right, graph a line that goes through -6, -4, and has a slope of 2/3. So you have to think about slope, all right? This is not the y-intercept. The slope of 2/3 tells us that we're going to go up 2 and we're going to go over 3. So you cannot start at this point, all right? This is not, because we don't know where are we going up 2 and over 3 from. Well, we're going from the point that they give us. It's not the y-intercept, it's just a point on the line. So I'm going to start with that first. I'm going to go -6x, and I'm going to go down 4, all right? So I'm going to start with plotting that point, -6, -4. And from there, I'm going to go up 2. I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3. Okay? So what that looks like, if you use your slope triangle, up 2 and over 1, 2, 3. Over 3. All right? And then you just draw your line from there. All right? Use your ruler to make your line look a lot neater than mine does. All right. You don't have to draw and color in the slope triangles. I'm just kind of using that as a visual, but there's your line. And that is the end of the first part.